The sound reached them before the sight did, a low, strained cry that drifted across the open land and settled uneasily in the chest. It was not loud, not the full voice of a healthy lion, but something thinner and worn, carried on the dry morning air. The rangers slowed their pace without signaling to one another, instinct guiding their steps as they followed the direction of the sound. The savanna around them felt unusually still, the grass standing stiff and pale beneath the early light, the ground marked by old tracks pressed deep into the dust. As they moved forward, the cry came again, shorter this time, ending in a breath that seemed to falter before finding its rhythm once more. The men spread out slightly, careful to keep distance, their movements measured and quiet. When the grass parted ahead, the lion came into view, partially obscured by tall stalks and low brush. Its body lay angled toward the shade of a scrub tree, shoulders heavy against the earth, muscles taut even in exhaustion. One forepaw was caught in a rusted steel trap, the jaws clamped tight around bone and sinew. Darkened blood stained the fur, dried in places, fresh in others. The lion lifted its head with effort, eyes wide and fixed on the approaching figures. Its breathing was shallow and uneven, each rise of the chest deliberate, as though the air itself weighed too much. The tail flicked sharply against the ground, cutting a thin line through the dust. It did not attempt to stand. The injury had drained its strength, and the long hours trapped had taken their toll. Still, the animal held itself with a quiet defiance, shoulders squared as much as pain would allow. The land seemed to respond to the tension. Birds that had been calling moments earlier fell silent, and even the breeze softened, moving the grass in slow, careful waves. The scent in the air was sharp and unmistakable, a mix of iron from the blood and the dry sweetness of crushed vegetation. Flies hovered nearby but kept their distance, unsettled by the low vibrations of the lion's breath and the presence of humans. One ranger lowered himself to a crouch at the edge of the clearing, stopping well short of the lion's reach. He rested his weight evenly, hands open and visible, his gaze steady but not fixed. "Easy, we'll help you," he said softly, the words barely rising above the sound of the wind. The lion's ears turned toward him, not fully flattening, not lifting either, caught between caution and fatigue. Its eyes did not leave the group, pupils dark, tracking every small shift. The lion shifted its weight slightly, a movement that drew a low sound from deep in its chest, not a roar but something closer to a groan. The muscles along its flank tightened, then eased. It tested the trapped paw with a subtle pull, the metal biting deeper, and quickly stilled again. The pain was evident in the way its body held itself, rigid in some places, slack in others, conserving what little strength remained. The rangers began to prepare without speaking, each man aware of his role. Tools were set gently on the ground, checked and adjusted with care. There was no rush in their hands, though the urgency pressed quietly in their minds. Every movement was chosen to avoid startling the animal, to avoid turning fear into a burst of strength that could worsen the injury. The lion watched them closely, head low, chin nearly brushing the earth, whiskers twitching faintly as it scented the air. The trap itself was old, its metal dulled by sun and rain, edges rough with rust. It had been placed and forgotten, left to wait without purpose, a silent threat that did not distinguish between target and chance. The lion's paw was swollen around it, fur matted and dark. Small tremors ran through the limb when the animal breathed too deeply. The injury had not killed quickly, but it had been relentless, stealing movement, drawing energy away hour by hour. Time seemed to stretch as the rangers waited, watching for signs of agitation or collapse. The lion's breathing steadied slightly, finding a slow rhythm. Its eyes blinked once, then again, lids heavy, though it did not fully look away. The tail lay still now, resting against the dust, the sharp flicks replaced by small, tired movements. In that quiet, something shifted, not trust, but a fragile tolerance, an acceptance of shared space born of exhaustion rather than understanding. Another ranger edged closer, steps placed carefully, his posture low and calm. "Almost there," he murmured, more to steady himself than to reach the animal. The words drifted and faded. The lion's ears flicked again, and it exhaled through its nose, a soft sound that stirred the grass near its muzzle. The savanna held its breath as the distance between them closed. The rangers did not rush the moment. They waited for the lion's body to settle, for its breathing to ease into a pattern they could work within. Every second mattered, yet none could be forced. The balance between fear and relief hung delicately in the air, as thin as the line between survival and loss. Above them, the light climbed higher, warming the grass and drawing faint shadows across the ground. The lion remained still, eyes open, chest rising and falling, the steel trap unmoving around its paw. In that quiet standoff, life rested on patience, on steady hands and slower breaths, while the wide savanna watched without judgment, the wind passing gently through the grass as if to remind them all how fragile the moment truly was. With the rangers already in position, the work began without ceremony, guided by breath and patience rather than urgency. One man eased closer, weight balanced low, while another steadied the tools between his palms. The lion's eyes followed every movement, unblinking, its body rigid against the earth. When the wrench met the metal, the first muted click echoed across the clearing, sharp in the quiet. The sound traveled through the lion's frame, and it reacted instantly. Muscles tightened along its shoulders, the tail snapping once through the dust. A low vibration rose from its chest, not loud, but firm, a warning shaped by pain. The rangers did not retreat. They paused, hands still, allowing the animal's breathing to slow before continuing. Sunlight climbed higher, settling warmly across fur and grass, catching on the rough edges of the trap. Dust hung in the air, stirred by cautious footsteps and the lion's uneven breaths. Its chest rose and fell in short intervals, nostrils flaring, eyes never leaving the figures nearby. The smell of blood remained faint but present, woven into the dry scent of savanna earth. Gloved hands adjusted their grip, inching closer to the jaws of the trap. The metal resisted at first, stiff with age and neglect. A second turn of the wrench brought another click, louder than intended. The lion flinched again, pulling back against the pressure before settling, a strained sound escaping its throat as the paw trembled. No one spoke immediately. The pause was deliberate, a shared understanding that speed would only sharpen fear. One ranger shifted his position slightly, lowering his shoulders, keeping his gaze soft and indirect. "Almost there," he murmured, the words barely audible, carried away by the open air. The lion's ears flicked at the sound, then angled back halfway, uncertain. Its body remained grounded, forelegs drawn close, weight kept off the injured limb. A faint shudder passed through its flank, then eased. The breathing slowed again, each breath a careful exchange, as though measured against the pain it carried. The wrench turned once more, slower this time, guided by subtle pressure rather than force. Metal groaned softly, protesting as the jaws began to separate. The sound drew another low growl from the lion, deeper now, less sharp, vibrating through its chest and into the ground beneath it. The rangers held steady, neither advancing nor retreating. Minutes stretched thin, marked only by careful movements and the lion's steady watching. Sweat darkened collars and gloves despite the calm pace. The trap resisted one final time, then loosened with a dull release. The sudden freedom startled the lion, which jerked its paw back sharply, claws scraping earth as it recoiled. The freed limb shook violently for a moment before lowering to the ground. Blood seeped slowly from the wound, dark against the dust. The lion bowed its head, breath coming faster now, sides heaving as exhaustion overtook adrenaline. It did not rise. It did not turn away. It remained where it was, gathering itself. The rangers stepped back in unison, widening the space between themselves and the animal. Tools were set gently down, no longer needed. No one rushed to touch or examine further. The choice was deliberate, an offering of space meant to honor the fragile calm that had settled after the release. The lion lay still, only the slight lift of its shoulders showing life and effort. Its ears turned independently, tracking the small sounds of movement, the distant wind through grass. The tail moved once, then rested. Pain remained visible in the careful way the injured paw was held, barely brushing the soil. Time passed without signal or instruction. The rangers waited, watching for signs of panic or collapse, ready to respond if needed. The lion's breathing gradually slowed, each inhale deeper than the last. Dust settled back onto the ground, and the tension that had sharpened the air began to soften. Trust did not arrive fully formed, nor did it need to. What existed was simpler, a pause in conflict shaped by shared stillness. The lion no longer pulled away from every movement, and the men did not edge closer than necessary. Both remained aware, balanced on the edge of instinct and restraint. The injured paw twitched once, then settled again, pressed lightly into the soil. Flies returned cautiously, hovering at a distance. The lion's eyes blinked slowly now, lids heavy, though they never fully closed. Fatigue spread through its frame, visible in the way its muscles finally eased. One ranger exhaled quietly, tension leaving his shoulders as he confirmed the trap lay open and harmless. "It's okay," he whispered, more habit than intention. The words faded quickly, absorbed by the open land. No response came from the lion beyond a slow breath, drawn deep into its chest. The men remained where they were, respecting the boundary that now felt essential. Intervention had ended for the moment, replaced by watchfulness. The lion shifted slightly, adjusting its weight, then became still again. The balance held, delicate and unspoken. A breeze moved through the grass, lifting dust and carrying away the metallic scent of the trap. Somewhere farther off, a bird called once, tentative. The lion's breathing matched the rhythm of the land again, slow and grounded. For the first time since the rangers had arrived, the moment felt steady. The lion did not look back as the men eased another step away, careful not to turn their backs abruptly. Space widened, and with it, a quiet respect settled. The rescue had not ended the danger, but it had lifted one weight from the morning. The savanna resumed its gentle motion, grass whispering under the growing light. The lion remained resting in the open, injured but free, its form steady against the earth. Above it, the sky brightened without urgency. Wind passed softly through the grass, and the land carried on, holding the quiet imprint of what had just been carefully undone. Nothing moved quickly, and nothing needed to, as calm settled fully. By late afternoon, the lion had moved to the shade of an acacia tree, each step tentative. Its paw bore a swelling bruise, but its eyes gleamed with a muted fire. The savanna breathed again, sound returning in layers rather than waves. Insects stirred beneath grass, and distant hooves pressed faint rhythms into the ground. Wind carried dust and pollen, settling on fur and leaves alike. Nothing rushed. The land seemed to allow the lion time, holding space around its careful movements as the sun leaned westward, light softening without dimming its strength yet. The lion paused often, breathing slow, listening more than looking, conserving energy with practiced stillness learned through hardship, heat, and long hours of waiting endured without choice or complaint in silence. Rangers remained where they were, bodies lowered behind tall grass, presence reduced to shadows and patience. Binoculars rose and fell gently, following each shift of muscle and weight. They spoke rarely, and when they did, the words stayed low, barely shaping the air between them. Their focus rested on balance, watching without pressing, ready but unwilling to intrude further. The lion noticed them only in fragments, ears turning, eyes lifting briefly before returning to the work of standing, sitting, and resting again. Distance held firm, respectful, unbroken by urgency or pride. The afternoon unfolded slowly, minutes stretching thin, marked by breath and blinking light. Grass bent and straightened with the breeze, counting time better than any watch carried on a wrist nearby. Unseen, steady, constant. The lion tested its injured paw carefully, lifting it just clear of the soil before setting it down again. Each attempt was measured, the rest of its body adjusting instinctively to protect what hurt. Muscles along its shoulders rolled beneath the skin, strength still present despite strain. A low exhale slipped from its chest, not a sound of alarm but effort. Nearby, birds returned to branches, their calls tentative at first, then fuller as stillness proved safe. The lion paused, head angled slightly, eyes tracking movement without pursuit. Life resumed around it, careful and conditional, as though the land itself waited for permission to continue. The lion's tail traced a slow line in dust, then lay still, conserving balance and warmth beneath the fading heat. As the hours passed, the rangers adjusted their watch, trading glances rather than words. One murmured, "She's strong. "She'll be okay," the sentence trailing off without expectation of answer. The other simply nodded, eyes never leaving the lion. Their calm was practiced, shaped by years of standing witness to fragile margins between survival and loss. They recorded movements, posture, breathing, storing details quietly for later, knowing that observation was as vital as action had been. The lion glanced toward them once, gaze sharp but unchallenging, then turned away, reassured perhaps by the absence of pursuit. Shade deepened beneath the acacia, cooling the ground, inviting rest without demand, while light thinned slowly, patient with endings that did not yet arrive fully, quietly, honestly, on their own. The lion lowered itself to the earth, chest touching soil warmed by day. Its breathing evened out, longer now, less guarded. The injured paw rested forward, not hidden beneath the body but not bearing weight. Flies gathered cautiously, then scattered with a twitch of skin. The animal remained alert, eyes half-lidded, ears rotating independently to read space. Fatigue showed in the slackening of its posture, the way effort seemed to drain from each movement. Yet strength lingered, quiet and intact. The savanna accepted this pause, sounds blending into a gentle continuity that asked nothing more than presence. Wind brushed grass, carrying distant herd murmurs, grounding the lion within familiar patterns older than injury or fear. Steady and enduring beyond the moment, now passing slowly away. From their vantage, the rangers saw the first subtle change. The lion lifted its head higher, scenting the air deliberately. It shifted its body, turning slightly toward the edge of the clearing. This was not approach, but orientation, a cautious alignment rather than advance. Ears flicked, nostrils widened, drawing in human scent without recoil. The lion stood slowly, weight distributed with care, then took one short step, stopping immediately to reassess. Muscles tightened, then eased. The movement ended there, distance still held. The rangers did not move. Stillness answered stillness, and the space between them remained clean of demand or claim. Recognition lingered only as posture and angle, not trust, but awareness shaped through quiet, measured moments, shared without threat or pressure present anymore. Now, evening crept closer, light thinning into amber tones that softened edges. The lion lowered its head again, satisfied with what it had learned. It rested once more, breath slow, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The injured paw remained tender, swelling unchanged, but no longer trapped. Relief showed only in the absence of strain, not celebration. The rangers continued their vigil, aware that recovery would stretch far beyond this day. They stayed, not to interfere, but to ensure the night arrived gently. Crickets began their evening cadence, stitching sound through cooling air. Grass shifted with passing wind, and the sky eased toward rest, patient with endings that unfold slowly, honestly, without witness or praise given freely, unannounced, and deeply deserved by endurance alone tonight. As the sun dipped lower, the lion remained, a steady shape against earth. Shadows lengthened quietly, touching grass and tree alike. The rangers held their distance, silhouettes fading into the land they served. Nothing more was required. Wind moved gently across the savanna, carrying scent and sound into dusk. The lion's breathing matched the land once more. In the widening quiet, grass bent and straightened, and life continued, unremarked but intact, as evening settled softly, leaving behind only the simple proof of survival written in stillness, warmth, and the slow darkening of sky, holding its calm above everything below, at rest. Night gathered gently, without urgency, and the savanna breathed on, wind whispering through grass, carrying the quiet weight of endurance into sleep unseen, whole. Dusk settled gradually, not as an ending, but as a thinning of light that softened every edge it touched. The heat of the day released its grip, and the savanna exhaled, colors shifting into muted amber and gray. The lion remained beneath the acacia for a time, still and listening, as though measuring the change. When it rose, the movement was unhurried. Muscles lengthened beneath the skin, shoulders rolling as it stretched. The injured paw lifted last, held briefly above the ground before being set down with care. The limb was still tender, but it no longer shook. Balance returned in quiet increments, each step deliberate, each pause intentional. The rangers watched from where they had remained for hours, bodies low, posture relaxed but alert. They had not expected movement toward them. The lion had space, shade, and the open land beyond. Yet it angled its body forward, not toward cover or water, but toward the thin line where grass met human presence. Its head was level, ears forward, tail hanging loosely with only a slight curve at the tip. The animal moved without haste, stopping once to shift its weight, then continuing. Dust lifted lightly beneath its paws, settling again almost immediately, as if unwilling to linger. The distance between them narrowed slowly. Each step was clear, unambiguous, absent of the tension that marked fear or threat. The lion's breathing remained steady, chest expanding fully, unguarded. Its eyes stayed open and fixed, not wide, not narrowed, simply attentive. The rangers did not move. Instinct urged stillness over retreat, trust over interruption. They understood that motion now could fracture something fragile, unnamed, yet unmistakably present. Wind moved through the grass behind them, brushing their backs, carrying scent without urgency. As the lion came closer, the land seemed to quiet again, not in alarm but in focus. Birds settled into trees, their calls thinning into soft intervals. The sky deepened in color, holding the last warmth of sun near the horizon. The lion stopped several meters away, standing tall despite the injury. Its head turned slightly, studying the shapes before it. Whiskers twitched once, nostrils flaring as it drew in air heavy with human scent. There was no recoil, no flattening of ears. The tail flicked once, slow and controlled. Time stretched into a narrow band of awareness. The rangers could hear their own breathing, feel the weight of their boots against the soil. One shifted his stance by a fraction, grounding himself. The lion remained still, gaze steady, posture neutral. Then, without any visible signal, it stepped forward again. The movement was small but unmistakable. Another step followed, then another, each one shortening the space that had defined their careful separation all afternoon. The lion stopped close enough that the rangers could see the subtle rise and fall of its flank, the way light traced the contours of its shoulders. Its injured paw remained slightly angled, protected, but it did not retreat. The head lowered, not submissive, not threatening, simply lowered. The animal leaned forward just enough for its muzzle to brush the edge of a ranger's boot. The contact was brief, almost incidental, a gentle pressure followed by stillness. A low vibration passed through the lion's chest. A sound felt more than heard, then faded. No one moved. The rangers froze, not from fear, but from understanding the weight of what was unfolding. This was not behavior taught or conditioned. It was not dependence. It was a moment shaped by circumstance, pain, restraint, and the absence of harm. The lion did not linger. It did not press further or demand response. It lifted its head again, eyes meeting the nearest human gaze for a heartbeat that seemed to hold the light itself. One ranger breathed out softly and whispered, "I can't believe it." The words were barely shaped, more air than sound. They fell into the space and disappeared without echo. The lion's ears flicked at the vibration, then settled. Its tail moved once, a slow, deliberate motion that cut a line through the dust. The animal stepped back, creating space as intentionally as it had closed it. The withdrawal was measured, not abrupt. One step, then another, the lion never turning fully away until distance was restored. Its head remained level, posture calm. When it finally turned, the movement was smooth, unhurried, the injured paw still favored but functional. It angled toward the brush at the edge of the clearing, where shadow had begun to gather. The rangers remained where they were, breath held, eyes following without pursuit. As the lion reached the grass, it paused once more, body half lit by the remaining glow of dusk. It stood there briefly, a solid form against the thinning light, then continued forward. Stems parted around its legs and closed again behind it, erasing the path it took. The sound of its movement faded into the layered quiet of evening, replaced by insects beginning their steady rhythm. The rangers did not speak immediately. They remained still, allowing the land to settle back into itself. What had occurred did not require explanation. It carried its own weight, heavy and humbling. They understood the boundary had not been crossed so much as acknowledged. The lion had not offered allegiance or gratitude. It had offered recognition, a brief alignment of presence shaped by shared restraint and the absence of harm. Darkness deepened gradually, cooling the air. The acacia's shadow stretched longer, blending into the brush. Somewhere beyond sight, the lion moved on, carrying its injury and its strength into the night. The rangers eventually shifted, slow and deliberate, careful not to disturb the quiet they had been allowed to witness. They gathered their tools, movements subdued, reverent. Above them, the last light slipped below the horizon, leaving a sky washed in deepening blue. Grass whispered as wind passed through, bending and straightening in gentle waves. The savanna resumed its steady breathing, unmarked by what had briefly set it apart. In the distance, a low murmur of life carried on, uninterrupted. Nothing more was needed. The moment had arrived, unfolded, and passed without demand. As night settled fully, the land held its silence, and the grass moved softly in the dark, carrying the quiet weight of recognition into the unseen paths ahead. Night arrived without urgency, easing itself across the land as heat lifted from the soil and the sky opened to the first faint stars. The lion moved steadily now, no longer pausing with each step. Its gait remained cautious, the injured paw still favored, but strength had returned enough to carry its weight with confidence. Muscles flowed beneath its fur as it passed through grass that reached its shoulders, stems brushing along its sides and closing again behind it. Moonlight settled softly along its back, dull silver against tawny gold, allowing it to merge with the shadows shaped by wind and uneven ground. The rangers stayed where they were, silhouettes against thinning light. They did not follow. Their role had ended with distance and restraint, and they honored that boundary without hesitation. Each man stood quietly, breathing slow, letting the night reclaim the space between human presence and wild movement. Equipment rested untouched at their feet. There was no need to speak. What had been witnessed required silence more than reflection, space more than explanation. The lion continued forward, moving along a path chosen by instinct rather than memory. Its head stayed level, ears alert, adjusting to sounds carried by the cooling air. Insects filled the dark with layered rhythm, and somewhere far off, hooves pressed the earth in slow migration. The lion's tail swayed lightly with each step, controlled and relaxed. It did not look back. The land ahead offered familiarity, cover, and the promise of distance that belonged only to it. Behind, the clearing softened into darkness. Grass whispered as the breeze returned, lifting scent and dust into the night. Crickets established their steady cadence, stitching sound across the open plain. A distant hyena called once, then fell silent, the echo dissolving into the wide space between stars and ground. Life resumed its quiet negotiations, balanced and indifferent to the brief interruption that had unfolded earlier in the day. The rangers remained still, allowing the lion's shape to fade completely before shifting their weight. One lowered his shoulders, tension easing as the moment finally released its hold. Another lifted his gaze toward the sky, counting stars without purpose. Their faces carried no triumph, only a subdued gratitude shaped by humility. They understood that what they had been allowed to witness was rare not because of its tenderness, but because it had not demanded more than it offered. The memory of the encounter lingered, not as a single image but as a sequence of sensations. The weight of stillness, the sound of breathing shared across space, the brief contact that had carried no claim, these impressions settled quietly, becoming part of the long interior record each ranger carried from years of watching life persist at its edges. This moment would not stand apart as spectacle. It would fold into their understanding of patience, of restraint, of the fragile line where help ends and respect begin. Beyond sight, the lion moved deeper into familiar territory. Grass parted and closed around it, erasing any sign of passage. The injured paw pressed into soil that cooled quickly, swelling held in check by motion and rest. The animal paused once beneath the outline of a low hill, scenting the air, then continued on. Night belonged to it now, filled with signals, boundaries, and paths known only through experience. Survival did not require acknowledgement. It required continuity. The rangers began to withdraw at last, steps slow and deliberate. They did not turn their backs abruptly. They gathered what little they had brought, leaving nothing behind but flattened grass and fading footprints. Their movements were careful, shaped by the understanding that the land had resumed its rhythm and did not need disturbance. The clearing returned to its ordinary state, absent of tension, absent of watchers. As they moved away, the savanna held steady. Wind passed through acacia leaves, producing a soft, irregular rustle that rose and fell without pattern. The ground released the last warmth of day, cooling into something firm and receptive. Above, stars multiplied, filling the sky with quiet depth. There was no marker to note what had occurred, no sign to preserve it. The land did not keep record in that way. The lion, now fully absorbed into the dark, became part of the night's movement. It stepped around thorns and stones, guided by memory embedded in muscle and bone. Somewhere ahead, water reflected starlight. Somewhere else, prey moved cautiously, unaware of the presence threading through tall grass. The lion's breathing remained steady, unlabored. Pain existed, but it no longer dominated each motion. Recovery would take time, but time was something the wild understood well. The rangers paused once more at the edge of their path, drawn back by the sound of wind sweeping through open grass. They listened, letting the land speak in its ordinary voice. No one tried to name the feeling that settled among them. It was not relief alone, nor pride, nor awe. It was a quiet acceptance that their role had been temporary, precise, and complete. They continued on, fading gradually into darkness themselves, shapes dissolving into the wider night. Behind them, the savanna stretched uninterrupted to the horizon. Life moved within it without pause or ceremony. The lion walked on, unseen and unremarked, carrying its strength forward into the long patterns of survival that required no witness. In the distance, grass bent under a passing breeze, then straightened again. Stars held steady overhead. Somewhere beyond sight, a lion moved freely through the night, and the land received it without question, holding the moment gently before letting it pass, like wind across open plains at rest.